The dust never settles. The wind howled across the barren prairie like a mourning widow. Abigail Carter stood alone on the porch of a crumbling cabin, clutching a tattered shawl around her shoulders. Her two sons, Thomas and Luke, just 10 and 8 years old, watched her silently from the window. She hadn't smiled in weeks. It had only been 3 months since her husband, Edward, died in a cattle stampede. His body was found trampled and torn, a grim reminder of the cruelty of the untamed land. In the days following his death, Abigail turned to his family for help. Instead, they turned their backs. "You brought him bad luck," his mother had whispered coldly, before slamming the door in Abigail's face. Left with nothing but debts and a collapsing homestead, Abigail faced a grim reality. Her pantry was empty, the roof leaked when it rained, and winter was creeping closer with every bone-chilling gust of wind. Each day was a battle, chopping wood, fetching water, teaching the boys their letters. She planted seeds with calloused hands and prayed over dry soil. Her boys worked beside her without complaint, their eyes too old for their young faces. She told them stories at night, pretending the world beyond their window wasn't so cruel. One evening, after burying the last of the dried potatoes, Abigail sat on the porch steps, trying to hide her tears. That's when she saw him. A figure on horseback approached from the south trail. At first, she tensed. Out here, strangers meant danger more often than hope. But as he drew closer, she saw the man was slumped in the saddle, his face weary beneath a battered hat. A rifle was strapped to his back, but it wasn't drawn. "Evening, ma'am," he said in a low voice, tipping his hat. Abigail stood cautiously. "Can I help you, mister?" He nodded toward the broken fence. "Saw that gate swinging loose. Figured someone might need a hand. Name's Elias Boone." She hesitated. The name meant nothing, but his eyes, sad, kind, tired, held no malice. "I'm Abigail Carter. This is my land." Elias nodded respectfully. Didn't mean to intrude. Just passing through. Been looking for a place to rest up. She watched the horse's ribs show beneath its hide. The man hadn't eaten well in days. Neither had she, but something in his posture, humble and slow, made her heart soften. "We don't have much," she said, "but there's a well with clean water, and if you're handy with repairs, we could use some help." Elias dismounted with a grunt. "Ma'am, I'd be mighty grateful." That night, he slept in the barn on a pile of hay, and the boys watched him through the slats. "Is he a cowboy, Ma?" Luke asked. Abigail only said, "He's just a man down on his luck. Like us." Over the next week, Elias proved himself a miracle. He fixed the roof with salvaged wood, reinforced the gate, and taught the boys how to handle a lasso. He barely spoke of his past, except to say his wife died 5 years earlier, and his only daughter had married and moved east. He never asked for anything in return, only took what food they could spare, and always offered to work more than he ate. Abigail noticed her boys laughing again. Luke followed Elias like a pup, while Thomas started asking about trapping and saddle work. For the first time in months, the house echoed with life. Still, Abigail remained cautious. Life had taken so much from her. Trust wasn't easy. But one night, as a storm rolled in, and Elias ushered the boys in from the barn with their cheeks pink and their hands full of firewood, she saw something in him she hadn't seen in any man since Edward. Kindness, steadiness, hope. Later, while the fire cracked and the boys slept on a blanket beside it, Abigail found herself speaking more than usual. She told Elias about her husband's death, about being cast out by family, about the loneliness. He listened, his gaze never wandering, and when she fell silent, he said, "No woman should be left to suffer like that. No child should go hungry. If you let me stay, I'll keep helping. Ain't got nowhere else to be anyway." Abigail looked down at her hands. "What do you want in return?" He shook his head. "Just a place to belong. That's all." Something shifted inside her then, something like peace. And outside, the storm passed over the prairie, leaving the land washed in the weight of the past. The days that followed Elias Boone's arrival were filled with the quiet rhythm of life returning to the Carter farm. The winter winds had started their relentless march across the prairie, but inside the cabin, there was warmth. Not just from the fire, but from the growing sense of camaraderie that Elias brought with him. Abigail watched him work tirelessly, as if driven by a quiet, unspoken purpose. He repaired broken fences, fixed the leaky roof, and built a small shed to keep the firewood dry. Every day, the boys became more attached to him. Luke, the youngest, would sit at Elias's feet, watching him carve wood or mend tools, asking endless questions. Elias answered them patiently, his deep voice calm and steady. As the weeks passed, Abigail found herself looking forward to Elias's company. His quiet strength gave her a sense of security she had not known since Edward's death. Yet, a part of her remained guarded. She couldn't afford to trust anyone so completely. She had learned the hard way that people came and went, leaving nothing but heartache behind. One crisp morning, when the frost still clung to the edges of the windows, Abigail found herself standing at the well, her hands gripping the bucket as she pulled it up from the depths. The cold air bit at her cheeks, and she tried to push away the unease gnawing at her heart. Elias had been with them for a month now, and in that time, he had become an integral part of their lives. Yet, something still lingered in the back of her mind, something unresolved. She turned to see Elias coming toward her, his coat pulled tight against the cold. His face was drawn, and there was a tiredness in his eyes that hadn't been there before. "Ma'am," he said, his voice rough from the chill, "we need to talk." Abigail's heart skipped a beat. "What's wrong?" Elias hesitated, then glanced down at his boots. "I've been thinking. You've done a lot for me. I don't want you to feel like you owe me anything. I'm just a man passing through, after all." Abigail frowned. "You've done more for us than anyone ever has. You've fixed this place up, helped with the boys. We're grateful." He nodded slowly, his eyes never meeting hers. "I don't mean to overstep, but I've been thinking about what happens when the snow melts. You'll be able to grow crops again, right?" Abigail's brow furrowed. "Yes, if the soil stays good, but I don't know if it'll be enough to get by. Not with the way things are." Elias looked at her, his expression unreadable. "I'm not saying you can't handle it, but I want to make sure you're prepared. You and the boys can't keep living like this." Her heart tightened at his words, but she nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. "I know." There was a long silence between them, the only sound the creak of the barn door swinging in the wind. "I can help you," Elias said quietly. "I'm out of skin for anything, but I think we could build something here. A future." Abigail's mind raced. Could she truly let him help her? Could she trust him enough to let him stay, to build something with him? He had no obligation to her, no reason to stay other than his own kindness. She had spent so long alone, so long just surviving, that the thought of having someone who truly cared, who wanted to build a life, was foreign to her. Elias's voice broke through her thoughts. "I'm not looking for anything more than a chance. Just a chance to do right by you and the boys. If you'll have me." Abigail's heart fluttered in her chest. She looked at the man who had been her savior, the man who had given her hope when she thought all was lost. The thought of her boys growing up without the shadow of fear hanging over them, of having a man who cared enough to help her build a future, was tempting. But the fear of dependence, of letting someone in again after all that had happened, made her pause. "I don't know," she said softly. "I don't know if I'm ready to trust again." Elias's face softened, and he took a step closer, his presence comforting yet firm. "I understand. I ain't a skin for more than you can give. Just a chance to show you I can help." Abigail looked into his eyes, the sincerity in his gaze undeniable. She had spent so long protecting herself and her boys from the world, but maybe, just maybe, it was time to let someone in. The wind howled again, but this time, Abigail didn't feel the cold. "All right," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "All right, Elias. Stay." Elias nodded, a small, grateful smile tugging at the corners of his lips. "Thank you, ma'am." As he turned and walked back toward the cabin, Abigail stood frozen for a moment, the weight of her decision settling over her. She had just opened her heart to a man who was once a stranger, but in that moment, it felt right.